Okay, we're 5 o'clock or just about. Okay, thank you. So welcome everyone to this special council on May 15th, 2023 at 5 o'clock. I will now call the special joint council meeting to order. We'll start with the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe, the people of the Three Fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nation, who have inhabited this land from time immemorial, and further give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis and Inuit whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse peoples. Moving on to approval of the agenda or additions to the agenda. Are there any additions? Seeing none, could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Coburn, Deputy Mayor McKay. I will call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. If there's any declaration of pecuniary interest, it can be declared at any time. And I will now welcome those of you from Wessex. Thank you for being here, and we will turn it over to you to start your presentation.
I am Director of Sales for WASIC. With me today and joining me is our Environmental Manager, Greg Wilson, and Tom Forenzovic, who is the owner of Phytech. So we are here to answer questions on our proposal that we submitted about a month ago now, I want to say. We're happy to answer any questions that the council might have. But what I wanted to do first of all was to just give you a sort of a brief overview as to who we are as a company. Some of you may never have heard of WASIC before. You may have. Some people call us We Suck, which is okay. That's how the name was actually designed from a marketing standpoint, because we are a VAC company. So we do a lot of VAC work. We have pocketbooks here for everyone as well. And the pocketbooks show all of our services, and we're going to leave those with you today as well. So you'll be able to have a look at that and have a pretty good understanding as to what we do for a living. But we go to places that no one wants to go to. So in 2000, WASIC was established by two brothers. They had one VAC truck and they work out of a basement. We now have 130 employees. We have 8 divisions. We are core certified, which is a certificate of recognition. The core certification for us is really key because half of our members of the 130 staff are family. They have the same last name. So as you can imagine, working with family, you're usually tougher on your family than you are on anyone else. So the demands are very high. We work with all the municipalities. At some stage, we would have worked with this municipality as well over the last 23 years. The key players for us are Toronto, PL, Hamilton, so the bigger municipalities that we deal with. And we also have cake storage opportunities with a lot of municipalities down in the Toronto area because they don't have farmland around there. So they need to be able to divert it somewhere else. One of the things that we looked at was when we put our proposal together was, who do we work with? Who do we build a strategic partnership with? We know nothing about anaerobic digestion at all. WASIC, we talk about a hedgehog. Our hedgehog is, what do we do well and what do we continue to want to do well at? Anaerobic digestion, we clean them out, but we don't know how to run them. So we went out to the marketplace to find a partner that we could put a proposal together with that would make sense to us. We've worked with Tom for over 4 years now. Tom works with Miller Waste and a number of other anaerobic digesters across Ontario. ZooShare is another one. And he actually builds the digesters. So what we said to Tom was, would you be interested in joining us as a partner and looking at this proposal? So obviously he said yes, otherwise we wouldn't have put his proposal in and he wouldn't be here with us today. But one of the things that we look at when we're building a strategic partnership is our core values when it comes to who are we and what do we do. So our core values are built on 4 pillars: joy, respect, balance, responsibility. And what we look for is a strategic partnership is companies that have similar background to us in terms of the culture, because you can't change culture. So we've got to find someone that's got the same sort of culture that we've got, same beliefs. So that's what we found with Tom. And that's why he is here today. So I've had like 2 minutes, and now we're here to answer any questions. So questions might be directed at me. I might ask Greg to come up or Tom to come up, depending on the questions that are being asked of us. Is that okay?
Now, you had actually given us a kind of document. Were you going to go through that at all, the presentation, or because that might bring up some questions, I'm thinking.
We certainly can. Yeah, we were, when we sat down with Patty, I want to say it was about a month ago, and reviewed our proposal. One of the things I stated right at the time was this was one of the hardest proposals for us to write, because we couldn't be definitive with anything we wanted to be definitive with, because there's so much unknown out there for us right now. But when you look at Wesek as a company, what I can talk about is the services that we offer. So you've got up there CCTV and flushing. So we have an infrastructure division. We have 6 CCTV trucks, and we have 5 flushing trucks. Our flushing trucks, where 4 of them are recyclers. So we are able to use the water over and over again and flush out the sewer systems or the storm systems. We also do video with sewer and storm. So if you didn't know already, we are in the poo business. That's what we do. So we clean out anaerobic digesters. We go into the city of Toronto and we clean out 1,200 ton, or sorry, dry ton of material in one anaerobic digester. So there's a lot of material that we handle on a daily basis. But the CCTV and flushing to us was a natural progression for us to get into, because when we started the business with a back truck and we back out wet wells and we go to aeration cells, and we do all of the stuff with our back work primarily. We also do a little bit of hydro excavation with our back trucks, but again, it's not something that we really specialize in, so we keep away from that a little bit. But it was a natural progression for us to go to the infrastructure division. And then we also entered in to repair the pipes from inside with spot repair. So what you'll find is if we were just down in Waterloo, they have a pipe that runs from Manitoulin to Kitchener, and it's about a 10-inch pipe. And by the time we got there, there was about 3 inches of available space to go through the pipe because of all the incrustation that had built up over the years. So that pipe just blew. So now you've got all the material everywhere. So we were brought in to, number 1, back it up, and then number 2, to clean out the pipe to make sure we could get it back in order again. So what we did with that division, which is Aqua, is we said to them, let's build a maintenance program for infrastructure to make sure this never happens again. Because one of the challenges you're going to have is you're going to have the MECP watching what you do when something like that happens. And then there's a huge cost, because every time you mention the word emergency, somehow the rates go up. So, you know, if you can put together a maintenance program, you're able to provide clients with a regular ongoing service. And that's what we try to do with a lot of our digester cleanouts as well. And lagoon cleanouts. When we purchased lagoons in Sarnia, which was in 2020, those lagoons hadn't been cleaned out in over 40 years. And so we went in there and we cleaned them out, and then we started to bring material in from Toronto, Peel, Hamilton, Niagara, a number of different municipalities. But we learned a lot of lessons through owning the asset in Sarnia, and we learned what to do poorly, and we learned how we would never do that again. So one of the things that we did when we owned the facilities, and we still own them in Sarnia, was to make sure that we brought someone in from the environmental standpoint that allowed us to make sure that we were doing the right things from an environmental perspective. So Greg's real title is to make sure that we don't do a cowboy again, which is essentially just not follow the letter of the law and do stuff that could cause some damage. So we actually built Mount Poo in Sarnia, and we have 2 lagoons in Sarnia, 16,500 cube each, so 33,000 cube in total, and you could have walked across those lagoons. That's how full they were with solids. We forgot water. We forgot the affluent. So now what we need to make sure of is a good mixture of affluent and solids to come in to allow us to mitigate odors is the big thing. We've brought aeration now into the Sarnia lagoons to, again, mitigate odors. So there's a number of things that you have to go through sometimes and make a number of mistakes to make sure that you do things right going forward. So are we perfect? No. But we love what we do, and we love playing in the field that we're in. The other parts, if you don't mind, if you can go to another slide for me. Dewatering is a big part of what we do also. I talked about a digester that we clean out with Ashbridges Bay. It's around 1,200 dry ton. We have to go into the digester, so we physically go into that digester, and we pump out the material, and we put it through a dewatering system. So then, instead of pumping out just liquid at like 4 or 5% solids or less, we're taking 18+% solids to a landfill. The City of Toronto want the material to go to a landfill if it's gone through the digestion process, but they also have a pelletizer on site, and that's where we get our material from when we bring it to our lagoons. It's not through a digester, it's through a pelletizing system that they have on site. So the dewatering equipment that we have 8 in the rounds, or ITRs. And the big thing for us is they provide the cities or the municipalities with a very good affluent quality when the water goes back in. What I mean by that is if you're cleaning the material or dewatering the material, you will have parts of the digester that are going to go back into the process. So essentially you're cleaning it out, but you're not removing all the material. So we've talked to a number of our municipalities for years to say that, the parts per million that you've got to get down to in most tenders is 1,000 parts per million. We can get ours down to 47 parts per million, which means the treatment process, you're not reprocessing material over and over again. That's big for us. The dewatering also saves a lot of money. We've seen fuel prices going up fairly recently, and if you're able to move material at 18 to 25% solids versus at 3 or 4% solids, you're not hauling water anymore. So now we're able to provide a process which allows other municipalities to save money as well. There's another slide there. It should be. Have a look. Haulage is big for us. We have 23 tankers that are 45 cube in each tanker. So 45 cube is 45,000 litres. So we use these tankers to go to field. So last year we spread 400,000 cube of material on farmland across Ontario. This year we're trying to get to 430,000 cube of material that we will spread on farmland. So we use our tankers because our tankers will haul from a municipality directly to field. We have 3 dragline systems. Each dragline system can move, and what the dragline system is designed for is to inject into the ground. So we don't top spread. So again, odor. So we inject into the ground, and then we also till the land as well for the farmer. So that's a part of our process that we do from a land application side. Next one. Well, sorry. From a haulage standpoint, though, we've also developed an organic waste recovery division. So food and beverage manufacturers that are around Ontario in 2025 are being told that organics cannot go to landfill anymore. So we are out looking for organics that currently go to landfill and trying to move them to an anaerobic digester. And that's what we've been able to do with quite a lot of material. We work for Molson. They do have bad beer, believe it or not. And we move about 2 of those tankers every week of material, and we take it to an anaerobic digester. So part of what we've looked at is, as a feedstock provider to Tom, who would be looking to come in and redo the anaerobic digester in Georgian Bluffs, is to find feedstock. If you don't have feedstock, the anaerobic digester is going to die. That's the key for, in our world, that's what we believe is the key for the success of any anaerobic digester. So we need to find feedstock for our partner, and that's what we're very good at. So we've found undigested cake material from a wastewater treatment facility in PL. So we can bring that in at 25% solids. We can put it through the anaerobic digester. It's going to produce good gas. We have found where we can bring Molson material in. We've got a number of cheese manufacturers, potato manufacturers, where we can haul the material in. We also look at the analysis on the haulage from point A to point B, and then that has to be reflected in the tip fee. So if we're going to haul something to a digester in Niagara and the material is actually in Hamilton, it's a relatively short window that we've got to drive it. We're now going to divert it to come up to Georgian Bluffs. The thing that has to be the balancing mechanism is the tip fee. So we've got a calculation that we work on that to make sure that that's done. So that's something that we would have to do with Tom as well, is to go through the process of what tip fee can we actually get, because we've got to haul the material a little further. But then what we've also got to find out is how much material is actually around this area, which we haven't done yet. I know that Chapman's has a facility in Barrie, which relatively speaking isn't that far away. But there's generally, if you put a focus on it, what we find is we generally will find a lot of material that is maybe just going down the sewer, as an example. And we can divert that to an anaerobic digester. Lagoon cleanouts, that's why we own lagoons, because we've cleaned them out for so many years. And 99% of the lagoons we clean out go straight to land. So again, what we need to have is we need to have the trucks to be able to haul. Generally speaking, when we're doing a lagoon cleanout, we're moving about 1,500 cube a day, and we need about 6 trucks. So what we make sure of is that the neighbors know what we're doing. So we go out, we talk to our neighbors. We have a NASM team, non-agricultural source material. We have a NASM team in-house, so they go out and talk to all the farmers, write the NASM plans up for the farmers, and then talk to the community about what we're doing. We also want to make sure that we're respectful of odors, that we're respectful of traffic. So we build a traffic plan as well. The last thing I think anyone wants is to see 15 trucks going through the center of Georgian Bluffs one day, carrying material. So we write up all of these things. We make sure we get it approved by the right people who are part of the municipality, to make sure again that we're causing, we're limiting the amount of challenges that you could have. The two things that we find with a lagoon clean out or moving material to a lagoon is odor and traffic. So the two things that we put into our letter of intent is that they're the two things that we will look at. We go through an independent study to make sure that we're not the ones telling you how we're going to actually move the material or where we're going to drive it through. We have an independent third party that will do that for us. And then again with the odors, what we're looking at right now with what we've gone through with Sarnia, and we're probably a couple of days away from having our final, what was it called, Brad? What we're going through Sarnia with? Mitigation plan. So when we put our mitigation plan together, which is like it's a couple of days away from being finalized, that mitigation plan will be endorsed in every lagoon that we come in and look after going forward. And that's a stipulation we know the MSCP are going to put on us, but it's also a stipulation we want to put on ourselves as well. So again, that is all about odor. It's about aeration. I believe one of your cells in at Georgian Bluffs there has aeration in a small cell, and the other one's the facultative lagoon. But we would actually come in and look to probably put aeration in both cells. Again, from an aeration standpoint, from an odor standpoint. That is a crawler. So it's a remote control. It's a pretty big piece of equipment. So we have a lot of people that want to play around with this and remote control it and drive it around the lagoons. They're very good at what they do, but what it does is it basically agitates all the solids that are at the bottom, and then it moves it over to where our pump systems are, and then from there we're taking the material out. So it's also protective of any sort of a liner that you've got. We also have a dredge, and the dredge is actually it's attached to the crawler. So again, it doesn't damage the integrity of the liner as we go through and clean out the lagoons. Some lagoon cleanouts, people want us, or municipalities want us to absolutely clean the whole thing out because they want to test the integrity of the liner. Some just want to gain capacity. So again, it's depending on what municipality is looking for what. What's the next slide? Sorry. Yeah, we're all about beneficial reuse. We actually came up with the slogan, turning waste into value. We've been doing it for over 20 years, and that's what we're looking to do and to continue to do. So take human waste and to land apply it for free to the farmer and look after the NASM plans and everything else like that, and then take food and beverage waste as well. What we've learned with the lagoons, though, is that we can't introduce more than one different type of product. So the lagoon would be designed for biosolids, as an example, liquid and solid. We would not look to bring in food waste because the food waste does not react very well, and then we create a lot of odor. And that was, again, the challenge that we had in Sarnia. That's one of our dragline systems there. So it's pretty, we deal with big equipment. We love it big and bold, and yeah, powerful, I suppose, is what we always look for. Sorry, the next one. Like I said before, safety, we're all of our crew are confined space, lockout, tag out. We go through an extensive safety program with all of our staff. It is the number one thing for us. As I mentioned before, 130 staff, half of them have the same last name. We want to make sure everyone comes home at night. We won't take risks on that. So we spent a lot of money on becoming CORE certified, which is Certificate of Recognition. It started off in BC, and it's morphed its way across to Ontario now. We have been able to work in Winnipeg because we had CORE. So we were able to go and work for the city of Winnipeg and do some CCTV and flushing for them for 6 months. We did have one reprieve. They said if it gets below minus 35, you don't have to work that day. It was minus 34 too many days. The next one. All right, that's spot repair. So we mentioned that it's an additional service that we have with our infrastructure division. And the spot repair, we go into the pipe and we can repair a crack in the pipe. So then you've probably heard over the last couple of years, I&I infiltration, water infiltration coming through the pipes, groundwater coming in, and the cost to actually process that material, because it's going to wherever the final resting place is, a digester, a lagoon, and it still costs you money to actually process all of this. So when we go in there, we look for any I&I, and generally speaking, you've got 1 through 5. So 5 is what they call a gusher. We don't come up with these terms, but it's the term of the industry. So what we do is we go in and we repair from the inside of the pipe. You don't have to excavate, cause a lot of traffic congestion, everything else like that. We use a UV system, so it cures very quickly, and we're able to get through and do about 3 or 4 spot repairs on a daily basis. Although my operations team would tell me 2 to 3. I'm in sales. What's the next one there? Yeah, it's our vac trucks. So you've probably seen vac trucks around and wondered what the heck they are. Like I said, we like bigger. So these things are extremely powerful. We can actually back up from about 200 meters down. And they have a holding capacity of about 10 cube. So we can put 10 cube back into the vac truck. We usually try to decant on site, which means any effluent we can decant back into the manhole. That means we're just taking solids away. Some municipalities allow us to do that, some don't. So again, we work within the letter of the law within the municipality. All of our guys, again, when we're using the back trucks like this, we're always putting 2 guys on a back truck for safety purposes. We will not put 1 person there. There's just too much power with these trucks, and we want to make sure again that every time our guys come back every day. Our back trucks are usually booked out around 85 to 90% of the time. So we do work. We had one of our guys that did about 2,700 hours, I want to say, one year. So there's a lot of overtime, but we also adhere to the 14-hour rule. And when we're working for the City of Toronto, it's their fair wage rate. So again, we work within the capacity of the City of Toronto. We have a lot of vendor of records with different municipalities, and that's a lot to do with VAC services as well, where we are the first call out to come in, look after an emergency or a challenge that the municipalities have found. Next one. I think we're getting near the end. Have you? And we've got booklets, and these images all came from our pocketbooks. So we have so we're going to give one of these that we've just talked about, and yeah, it just covers off a little bit more detail than maybe what I've gone through, and hopefully it's given you a good understanding as to who ASIC is. When we looked at the opportunity that came through with the RFP, our position was to look solely at what we're good at, which was the lagoons, and then bring in a partner that can look at the anaerobic digester. Not to try to do both, because we would not do very well with the anaerobic digestion side, because that's not who we are. So again, we wanted to make sure that we bring the right partner in, and we do the service that we say we can do, and gain the confidence of the townships.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Mayor Mackey, go ahead.
Thanks very much for your presentation, and coming up from Brantford, is it?
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's our corporate office. We've actually got 3 offices. We have the Sarnia location. We also have an office in Angus, and then in Brantford we have what we call the yard, which is where most of our trucks hang out for the night. We have a lagoon on site there as well, and then we have a corporate office where people like me that don't really want to be around that every day. We have our sales team in there. We have our finance division in there, and we have our project coordinators in there as well. So we have about 25 individuals that work in our corporate office, which is also in Brantford, but it's about a 7-minute drive to our yard. But yes, yeah.
So a couple of questions. The first one, how receptive has the agricultural community been to receiving Maven? We've tried to work with our farmers up here over a number of years and found that they weren't too receptive. There was concerns about the type of material that they would be receiving, the drug and things like that. So can you how are you able to get farmers on board to accept your material? Can you just discuss that with us a little bit, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a very good question. Like I said, we spread to about 5,500 acres across Ontario. That's what we do to move the material, and we're getting more and more demand for finding more farmers. We run out of material before we run out of farmers. And it's all about the quality of how you actually look after the material when you're land applying it. So we're screening the material. We make sure no plastics are there at all, and we're also running analysis on the material before we take it to a farmer. So we can actually sit down with the farmer when we're building the NASM plan and talk to them about the analytical of the material that's coming to them. And then once we've gone through that with the farmer, then we then set up the land application. It depends on crop rotation. What we've found in like Sarnia is because there's a lot of clay, it is difficult to land apply in the spring months. That come 4 months, there's a lot of farmers that want the material for that time of year. So we're sitting down with the farmer and really talking to them and getting a good understanding. We like I said before, we've got a NASM team, and a NASM team are wonderful young ladies that have all got degrees in farm management practice, and one's an agronomist, I think, from memory. But so they know what they're talking about. That's the number one thing. So when we sit down, we actually go to meet with the farmer for the first time. It's usually knocking on their door, and hopefully they're home, and hopefully they're dressed. We don't always see that. But yeah, so what it is, it's a matter of communicating well with the farmer and then not letting them down. Now, one thing that we can't control when it comes to land application is the weather. The weather's the big thing that's going to stop land application, because we cannot land apply if it's been raining for a long time or even the day before. We've got to let the fields dry out, because if we come onto a farm field with our heavy equipment that you've seen, we're going to chew up that ground. The farmer's not going to be very happy. So what we've also done is we've looked at the nutrient value of the material that was spreading on the land, and our equipment, our tractors, our John Deere, I think it's John Deere, yeah, John Deere equipment. We've actually got a program now where when it's a land applying, if it's going up a hill, it's land applying at the same speed if it was going down a hill. So we're not, in some farmers or some other companies, you'll find that there's heavy pockets of material being put on the farmland based on the topography of the land. With our equipment, we make sure it's evenly spread. So we spread about 13,000 gallons per acre of liquid biosolids. We don't do cake biosolids, but we do a couple of programs, but we bring in someone that specializes in that for us. I don't know if that's answered your question.
Yeah, you did. I was just, curious, because I know there's been some pushback from the ag community about the type of material that they're receiving, about the negative long-term, results from having the material spread. So my second question, you touched upon it. I certainly did some Googling when I saw your proposal come in, and up pops Sarnia. That's the first thing that, and I see some smiles behind you. So you said you learned some lessons. Can you just share with us, because there's been a lot of concerns apparently in the Sarnia area.
Yeah.
Can you just share some of those lessons there, please?
Yeah, it's honestly right now, we've gone through a year of not moving any material into the lagoons. And so from a sales perspective, very difficult, because you're also reliant on that from a revenue standpoint to pay for the farm application and everything else like that. The lessons that we've learned is, number one, we've got to have water or affluent water cap supinate in the lagoons. So what we've done is we've created a calculator to allow us to figure out, okay, so we're bringing in 25 to 28% solids from Toronto as an example. And we've got 33,000 cube of material that we can bring in. So a cube and a ton, same thing, roughly speaking. I know if Shane was watching this, my owner, he'd go, Phil, it's not, but roughly speaking. So when we looked at bringing in material, we looked at, say, okay, we can bring 20,000 ton of material into our lagoons, and we need to then have 13,000 cube of liquid to give us that cap to make sure we've got at least, I think, is it a foot, right? We're going to have at least 1 foot of water in that lagoon to, again, mask the odors. So that was a big learning curve for us. And you'd think, well, you guys have cleaned out lagoons for years, but we'd never owned lagoons. So it was it's one of those things, sometimes you can be too far into the forest to see the trees. But yeah, other lessons that we've learned is that we really want to make sure that we look after the residents. When we took over the lagoons in Sarnia, we were like, our residents, there's Imperial Oil right here, and we've got Alexio here, and Dow Chemical owns what was it? It was a landfill beside us. So we're like, okay, from an immediate standpoint, you've got industrial clients that maybe have some odor challenges of their own. We've never really thought about residents that were a kilometre away. And that was the biggest challenge that we had with Sarnia, was the residents are about 1 kilometre away. And when you've got a lot of wind coming and driving it towards the residents, you're going to get odor complaints. So the thought process, again, for us is to make sure that we've got aeration in the lagoon. We've got a water cap on the lagoon. And then Greg is telling us from a sales perspective what we can actually put into the lagoon. So we'll come to him with all sorts of things. And he's like, no. So, and we've made sure that we've got one person that's in control of that. Because like I said before, we were sort of cowboys at the start. We're like, this is fantastic. But we learned a valuable lesson, which was you've got to work with the community. You've got to work with the residents. If you upset the residents in any way, shape or form, you've read about us. We had a look the other day because when I was driving to Sarnia, I heard that there was some music festivals coming up. So we've already looked at when the music festival is going to be there. We're looking at putting in a bubblegum flavor demisting system. We went down and we met with we've gone through a lot. We went to Burlington, just down the road from us, and we met with a large slaughterhouse down there, and we said, you know, like, you're right in the heart of Burlington. How many odor complaints do you guys get in a week? They said maybe one. Okay, how? They've got this bubblegum demister that they just let go through the air every 15 minutes. So the thought process that we've got is people would rather smell bubblegum than the alternative. So again, it's these things that we're looking at as well. Like I said, it's been a heck of an education for us. It's been a painful education for us, but it hasn't stopped us wanting to do what we do well, which is to create a storage opportunity for municipalities. So if we are given the go ahead to say go to the next level, which would be enter into discussions with the two towns and the MECP, we would want to make sure that we've got all of our ducks in a row too, in terms of like letter of intent. Where are we going? What are we doing? How are we doing it? What's the time frame around all of this to be done? And again, that's something that we were really bad at the start. When I got in front of the city of Sarnia and I set my timelines for the city of Sarnia, they thought I was smoking something that they really wanted, because my timelines were so unrealistic in terms of we came in front of them, I think it was in April, and I wanted to have material going in there by September. So that means we had to go through an amendment to the ECA. We had to get a name change on the ECA. And then we had to make sure that we had the material from Toronto ready to come in as well. None of those were realistic. So again, it's painting a realistic picture to everyone to make sure that these are the timelines that we need to adhere to. And this is what we see as being realistic. But we also know that we need to have the town on our side. You've read comments from probably the mayor, I think it's Mayor Bradley. And he did sign the purchase order with us. But he was one of the first to come out and say we should never have done this. We don't ever want to be in that position again. What we're trying to do is be an asset to the community and an asset to the municipality. What we do know about the lagoon system is that it can act as a contingency to a lot of different municipalities. We all know about the building moratoriums that have been put on a lot of municipalities today. The infrastructure just simply can't handle the build that municipalities have been asked to do. By having lagoons available for material from outside of a certain region, it gives those municipalities the ability to have a contingency or a backup. And I think if I said to anyone around this table, what's your contingency or backup? If your main system failed today, you may have an answer, you may not. And that's something that we've all got to sort of own. So again, what we're trying to do here is provide a service. Not everyone likes to deal with poo. I don't know why, but not everyone likes to deal with it. In fact, not everyone wants to talk about it. But from our perspective, it's what we do for a living. It's what we love. And we want that to be looked at with the right sort of perspective, because when you're dealing in an industry like this, you can't treat the industry like that. if that makes sense.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Day? Oh,
Hello, I'm Counselor Dave over here. No worries. I guess you were looking at the other side of the room. In your proposal, you write about bringing up biosolids from Toronto and Peel and Waterloo, and I'm guessing that's to make the biodigester or the lagoons more financially feasible to run. Is that a correct assumption to make?
Not really.
Okay. Do you mind explaining then?
Sure. Well, like I said before, we do deal with a number of municipalities across Ontario, and that's usually the larger municipalities where there's a lot more residents that need to have alternative measures. City of Toronto, as an example, they have 21 digesters on site at Ashbridges Bay alone. So the largest wastewater treatment facility in Canada. They have a pelletizer on site that pelletizes material as well, and then they sell that to the farming community. But over half of the material, if the pelletizer goes down, there's a really big need for it to move somewhere else, and their mandate is for it to be beneficially reused, so no landfill. So what we're seeing with and those municipalities that you just mentioned, they all have a similar goal, which is no landfill. So what we're looking at from a lagoon standpoint is how do we maximize the solids that are going to come into a lagoon, say up here. And when we look at that, we could say, okay, well, maybe we could deal with raw material only. So that's undigested sludge and undigested liquid that could come up here. You already have undigested liquid that comes in here today through your septic haulage. So with the septic haulage, and you're already receiving raw material, then for us to bring in raw cake makes perfect sense because there's a time limit that you've got to put on the material. I think it's 2 months, Greg. Okay.
The time limit up till 2004, there was a recommendation or a mandate in the regulations for land spreading under OMAFRA regulations for a 3-month. If you put raw material into a lagoon, you had to wait 3 months before you spread it on land. That was removed after 2004, and they've done 2 updates since then in 2014 or 2008, 2014. That wording has been removed. So there's currently no time limit, but we're holding on to like a 2-month retention time just to make sure that the lagoon has a time to be bioactive and break down the E. coli numbers for when we do the testing, because we do testing for land application. And when you test for E. coli, you have to do your geometric mean. So we want to hold on to that to let it process. But the regulation is actually being removed. We just added that in the 2-month time frame to add an extra safety bond.
No worries. So whichever person is best qualified to answer, it's all fine with me. I would just love to hear a little bit more about, you have acknowledged the additional financial cost in terms of gas prices to haul up this far. And there's also trying to find that elusive balance of carbon emissions and local solutions. And I would appreciate if you can elaborate a little bit more on that. That would be great. I realize it's a fairly vague question.
So what we do is we look at the geographical point that we're picking material up from and where we take it to. So the 2 examples we could use right now would be Toronto at Ashbridges Bay, taking it to Sarnia, or Toronto at Ashbridges Bay, bringing it here. The distance for us to bring it here is about 30 minutes closer than to Sarnia. Now, we also haven't taken into account when I came up here in January 31st to do the site visit. The roads are not as good on a highway coming up here, right? There's some whiteout conditions, and maybe the time frame over the winter is going to be a little bit more difficult for our guys to drive up here. But we look at all of that. We want to make sure that it's from a financial standpoint, we don't want to be bringing material from, say, Ottawa to here. It doesn't make any sense. What does make sense is for us to get lagoons in Ottawa, as an example. But because you're so close in terms of geography to the distance that we're traveling to Sarnia already, from a financial standpoint, it doesn't make any difference. What will make the difference, like I said, is in the wintertime when the roads are maybe not as great. But we also found in February, the weather was great. So, or better than what it has been. So it's hard to determine a number of things that we don't know. But what we do know is just the simple math of it's X number of kilometers from here to there. And it's going to take us this long to get from there to there. So one of the things that we look at is setting up a hub in the location where the end result is going to be. So setting up a hub here and having equipment staged here and having drivers here means our drivers would leave from here, go down to Toronto as an example, and then come back, drop the material in the lagoon, go home for the day. That makes more sense to us than start in Brantford, go to Toronto, drive up here, drive back down to Brantford, and then go home. There's a lot more hours involved in that. So again, from our perspective, it's to build a hub where we can employ drivers from here. One of the hardest things we've found over the last year and a half, and I know we're not alone on this, is finding drivers. Like, it's very difficult. But what we do know about drivers is they do want to be home at night. So if we can find drivers here, and we can make sure that they're home at night, it makes our HR department, they'll like us a little bit more. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. I and you led right into my next question about road conditions in this region. So that was, and winter conditions. So that was very handy. If we experience growth here, will you be responsive to increased waste products in this region?
Yeah, what we believe is that all municipalities are growing. And at the end of the day, part of the process that we want to go through is to look at a contingency for this area to start with. Okay, so what's the contingency that you guys are going to need to have to make sure that you've always got that backup, you've always got that contingency there? That's what we owe to you guys, I think, at the end of the day. Then for us to go out and find other municipalities that need that contingency, we can put that together. But first and foremost, sorry to the gentleman over there, what lessons have we learned? Look after the municipality that you're dealing with, or the townships that you're dealing with first and foremost, and make sure that we're adhering to their concerns and requests. So yes, is the short answer.
Okay, Deputy Mayor McKay.
Thank you. I'm quite impressed with your presentation. You mentioned there back a while ago about, sounds like a big amount of dry material that you get out of Toronto.
I saw your eyes rise.
So
yeah.
So that dry material, what's it used for and where does it go?
So that's coming out of a digester. So it's totally different material that we take on that we have the contract with Toronto to take on a daily basis. So when it comes out of a digester, right now the city of Toronto are saying we need you to take it to a landfill. So we dewater the material and then we ship it to a landfill. Most of the times we deal with waste management, and they have a facility right down in Toronto called New Toronto. So we ship it to them and then they move it with garbage.
Okay, so you would never think of bringing dry material up here to dump on our landfills?
We have not looked at that. No. It's not to say we couldn't. If there's an opportunity for us, and if the tip fee on the landfill outweighed the additional cost to bring it up here versus taking it, within Toronto, we drive it from, do you know where Ashbridges Bay is? It's right down on the water there, and we drive it to Etobicoke. So it's not a big travel distance. But if there was an opportunity for us to enter into discussions, then we would look for that as well. At the end of the day, like I said, the landfills are right now being told that nothing's really we haven't seen anything come out other than like some direction verbally that organics are going to be removed from landfills. So when that happens, it's going to change quite a few things. But until that happens, and when it's going to happen, we don't know, because with that whole COVID discussion that went on, hopefully I'm allowed to say that without, causing too many problems. But with what happened with COVID, I think a lot of discussions on the organics going to landfill sort of like just went away. So when they're going to come back, we're not too sure. We're always looking for disposal options. Disposal options are incredibly important to us. So there's always opportunities for us to have discussions there as well, yes.
Just one more thing. I guess this biodigester all started when the so-called government at the time said there'll be no more spreading on fields. Here's a bunch of money. We want you to get into biodigester. So we jumped into it. Well, the government has never come through, and likely will never come through because of Northern Ontario, to stop spreading on farmers' fields. So as far as you're saying, maybe in 25 they're going to ban products from going into a landfill. Good luck.
I'm with you on that. Yes, yeah. We would love to be able to grow the farm base around here. We've looked at your soil type here. There is rock here, but your soil conditions are one of the best in Ontario for land application. So that would allow us to potentially be able to land apply in the spring and in the summer. And I mentioned before when we were in Sarnia, where their soil conditions are clay. So it really doesn't give us the ability as often to be able to spread in the springtime. But up here, I think we would have more of an ability based on your soil conditions up here.
Deputy Mayor Pringle.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. There's a lot of good information there. First question I had from the start was, were you guys looking for a dumping ground? Like, were you looking for a place to move some product away from Sarnia, Toronto area? But you've saying you're going to make it a hub, which is good news because it makes you more accountable if you got guys working here that live here. So I'm really glad to hear that piece of it. You mentioned that the farmers don't pay for the application to their fields, and so where do you make your money then?
So it's the tip fee that we charge. So we charge a municipality a tip fee to take that material and then store it and then land apply it. So it's the municipality that pays for that part of it. And that all of that part of it is also what do we do with it at the end, which is to land apply it to the farmer. If our material was CFIA approved, which it's not because it's a Class B biosolid, we would be able to charge the farmer if it was a Class A. But the two brothers that own this company have been land applying to farm fields for over 20 years for free. You talk to them about trying to charge a farmer. I've tried it once and it didn't go well. So, but it was more to do with the cake material that we're trying to get in from Toronto. But at the end of the day, it's about our culture and what we do, and that's why we talked about the culture before as well. It's a big belief in why we do what we do and how we do what we do. There's not a lot of people that really line up after school and saying, "Hey, I want to do what you guys do." It's difficult to find people to do what we do. But when you find the right people that absolutely love dealing with the material that we're dealing with and the way that we deal with it and the way we treat the farmers, we've had people that have worked for us for the 23 years that we've been in business. So it says something about just the culture of the company.
Well, that's great. Yeah. So you answered a couple of questions for me there. I'm kind of dying to hear from Tom on what his ideas may be for the biodigester. We haven't heard a whole lot on it, and would love to hear from Tom if that's okay, just to see what your thoughts are and what you proposed.
I was hoping he would do all of the talking.
Yeah, right. No problem to talk. Hi, everybody. I'm Tom, the CEO and owner of Phytech Environmental Technologies. Right. So I there's some information that was emailed, I think, to everybody with the presentation. You guys own a digester for a number of years, so I probably don't have to. I'll just go into too much detail as you know what it's about. I can just say that so in Canada, I've built 6 plants. So Grimsby, I've got a plant in Nova Scotia, 4 underway in Quebec. So, and I'm just actually wrapping up commissioning on a project in Mexico. So I'm in Canada, the US, and Mexico. So my company's, I'm not the largest company in biogas in the world, not the smallest either. I tend to do custom work, specifically, with food waste and urban food waste. I can count, 2 stalwart clients that are up in this area, 2 Miller and Walker Industries as my customers. And you're welcome to call them for reference. It's fine. Right. So about this proposal. So when Phil approached me, so I know a bit about the history about the site in the biogas industry. I think most people know a lot about the site over the years. So right now, what's my proposal? To make a successful biogas project, it's all about the feedstock. It really ultimately comes down to what you can have available for the site. That's the key thing, because a biogas plant needs to be specifically designed for a feedstock or feedstock mix. So that's number one. The second thing is, well, of course, there's the land application piece, because when you build a digester, regardless of whether it's for biosolids or it's for food waste, you only have about a 20% mass loss in terms of the volume. That's what the gas is produced. The bacteria can only eat carbohydrate, fat, and protein, which is what we eat. So cow manure doesn't have much left in it. Neither does sewage, because we've consumed it all. So you have to kind of take a holistic view of what you can do with a facility, but it also comes down to utilities, power availability. It has to do with nowadays it's mostly no one is really interested in renewable electricity as much as they are renewable natural gas. You may have heard about that. So right now the marketplace is to take the biogas, clean it, upgrade it to pipeline quality drop-in fuel replacement for what they call CRNG, so compressed renewable natural gas for short or long haul transport trucks, or you're just putting it in the pipeline to offset the mandated companies in Canada that have to buy the carbon credits, like Enbridge, Irving, et cetera, these large utilities. So that's really the marketplace right now, is in terms of is to produce this RNG, renewable natural gas. And so what really I'm proposing an investigation, I guess, kind of a feasibility to determine what's available. I don't know. I mean, I know the site. I don't remember too many details specifically about how large the facility is, what utilities are there now or not in terms of power. And so what being a strategic partner to WESC and the design and building of anaerobic digesters, that's what I would kind of propose right now, is to take a look at what could be done with the site, and looking at the context of today's marketplace and marketplace conditions. Obviously, I can say, I think pretty comfortably, that leaving it at the size and scope that it is right now would not be commercially viable. We would need to increase the size. I could tell you that to do a facility for less than 20,000 metric tons a year of organic waste processed would not work. We can't, the concrete, rebar, and labor cost to build a biogas plant for less than that would not generate a return. And so, or anything that would be commercially acceptable to a lender or investor in that regard. So I can give you some bookmark, like I call them, bookends or goalposts for a successful project. And so those are some of the things that I would have to sort of dive into. And I think I would propose that I have say a period of time to investigate those economic conditions that might be able to generate a proposal for the townships to, whether it be a lease, long-term lease for the facility, or purchase, or whatever. I'd have to kind of put the commercial conditions to paper and see if it pencils out. So anyway, that's just a very high level, quick, rapid explanation, but I'd happily open the floor to the questions, concerns, or anything around.
So does anyone have any questions for Tom? Mayor Mackey.
I wish you'd been around 12 years ago when we were first,
Well, I actually was. I've been in business since 2007.
what sort of investment would be required to bring, and I know you don't have all the information,
Right.
but
So-
you talked about the size, so
Yeah.
it would have to significantly increase. There would be a big investment if it will.
Right. So I can give you no problem to share some recent project information, right? So for example, my last project that got to in Canada that finished was the Toronto Zoo Share Biogas project as an example. So that's a 500 kilowatt system. It was around $6.5–7 million for that project. That was like a turnkey price. I didn't do the whole price, supplied my components, but I know the overall capital cost. So, and that processes 17,000 tons a year of material. So just to give you a scale scope of obviously we've had some inflationary changes since then, so it'll be a bit more expensive than that today. But yes, that's roughly what you could look at for around a 20,000 ton plant. So it'd be a little bit more. Maybe it's $8 million to build something like that.
I believe in the proposal near the end, it talks about you were to do the evaluation and then be involved in the decommissioning if that made the most sense. Do you believe there's any value in any of the generators or material that would be there in the biodigester if it was decommissioned?
Well, so is there some value there? Yeah, I think there is. I mean, concrete's concrete, tanks. You can reuse things. I mean, there's no sense to knock something down if it's not necessary. What I have to do is take a look at, for example, if we, I would look at a couple things, and this is sort of part of the feedstock evaluation that I have to do with WESIC, which we haven't done yet in detail. Is to say, okay, what is possible today? What's possible tomorrow? And say, okay, because digesters are inherently modular, right? 1 tank, 2 tanks, 3 tanks. You can increase capacity over time, provided you design properly at the beginning, so you don't shoehorn yourself into, let's say, a situation that's not expandable for future growth. So, and it also depends on, what would be expected to be brought into the site. Can we pre-process organics? I think my personal opinion is that it would be great to do something here where we could do what I call co-digestion. So we have the activated sludges mixed with industrial organic material, like from whether it's yogurt production, dairy production, abattoirs, etc. Those kind of things, and bring it in. Increase the average gas yield of the material that you're handling, so you produce more gas. But I think that I think you've got some assets there that might be reusable. The total commercial value, let's say the value now, I don't know. So that's something that I have to kind of think about. I think probably if I remember correctly, I think one of the biggest challenges might be the single phase power. I don't know if it's still single phase power there or not. I think that's one question, because in the biogas, when you have a CHP, it's not as critical, but with biogas upgrading, so you require a fairly large compressor, and the energy consumption for scrubbing the CO2, right, separating the CO2 from the methane to make it equal to a fossil gas, that requires a fairly large compressor of a couple hundred kilowatts, and it's not run, that's not all the power it consumes, but you need to have that. You're going to need to have, I don't know, 600 amps type service there. Could be a question mark or whatever, or we could do a CHP, potentially supply some self-power or natural gas or propane. We need some heat to heat the digester. So there's let's say some value engineering and thought that has to go into designing something that makes sense, right? So it's not something I can, we have to pencil it out and see what's available and not, and then come up with a plan that makes sense. Because yeah, there's probably 3 or 4 scenarios that we legitimately have to run through to say, okay, option number 1, there's minimal grid power. Option number 2, upsize the CHP use. Well, we wouldn't want to consume our own biogas because it's available to the market. It's much more valuable. So we would buy propane or natural gas to heat the facility and then sell all of the biogas to the market, right? Those are the kind of things we'd have to evaluate in terms of the business case. Yeah.
Anything further from anyone? Counselor Greg, I see you online, so if you have any questions, just wave your hand at me.
Thank you, Mayor
Okay, if there's
Carlton.
no- Oh, you're muted, Ryan, or got on.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, you're good.
Thank you. No, I'm enjoying the conversation. I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mayor Mackey.
Thanks. And this isn't biodigester related. Has to do with tipping fees. It says that there would be discussions with the townships between 23 and 24 to decide whether or not material could continue to be accepted. Is there a question mark if you were to take on the operations of the lagoon, whether material from our two townships would be accepted?
No, there's no question about that at all. I'd have to go back and have a look at that. So you said
Discuss with
23,
townships if
24.
Wessex will continue to accept raw from local haulers, and if the current rates would stay in place.
Mhm.
That's the
Yeah.
comment.
Yeah, so what we're looking to try to do is to say, you've already got, I think you've got one company that's looking after the haulage right now of the sewage that's going into the lagoons. We would not want to take that over. That's not of interest to us. So we would want the material to continue to come in because, like I said before, we need the raw or the affluent, because the material that's coming into the lagoons through the septic system is probably 1 to 2% solids. So the rest is water, which is what we need from an affluent standpoint. So we want to continue to receive that material in. We'd also want to try to get more raw coming in from outside of the municipality, because if we looked at your numbers, I think it was 25,500 cube of available storage. I want to say there's about 15,000 ton that we could bring in solid. So we would need 10,000 cube of liquid. And from what we understand, you don't have that much liquid coming in on an annualized basis right now. So we would need to go out and find more. Now there's also rain, which is great. That helps, but in snow. But we would want to try to find some more affluent, some more raw material from around this area to, again, make sure that we have the right water cap on. So then I don't get phone calls from the guy behind me saying, you're not doing your job. That's his job to tell me that I'm not doing my job. So hopefully that answers the question, but I'm not too sure.
We have guaranteed access to the lagoon.
Yeah, that's what we want to make sure, that we look after the owner. And that's why we would propose right now the lease option, because then you would have, you would be in control to a certain degree of what's coming in. There would be discussions, ongoing discussions. It wouldn't be like you were in the dark. We would want to make sure that you knew what was coming in. We'd want to be able to provide you with, I think I said, a quarterly report, and have engagement with the municipalities. But number one is to make sure that there is space for you guys at all times. Yes.
Deputy Mayor McKay.
Thank you. I don't know how it is in other parts of Ontario, but in this area are local haulage companies. Once they're approved or the fields are dry, they pretty well dump it on their fields that they already have registered to put the sewage on. So
Okay.
that would make some kind of difference, wouldn't it?
Right.
Yeah, for farm, the haulage has a NASM system in place, or a NASM agreement with farmers. They can take material from the land, and they're going to follow the regs. And I keep grabbing this because this is what I read every day. It's 26703 regulations. So it's been 20 years. This is what determines when a waste becomes a nutrient. This is how it changes from a waste to something that's beneficial. So if a hauler is taking it to a farmland, he's done the paperwork through this to apply it. You can only apply NASM material, biosolid material from April 1st until November 31st. After December 1st until April 1st, you cannot apply that. So over the winter, you can't. So be looking at bringing in, they couldn't apply then. So the lagoon would be a storage facility for that. Then you can land apply again in the spring after April 1st. And then your application season finishes at the end of November. So going to build up your material, fill your lagoon over the winter, spring apply or apply during the season, spring if you can, like Phil mentioned around Sarnia, very difficult because as soon as because we inject, we're applying about an inch of water to that hectare of land. So when we're putting down, say, 100 cubic meters, he talks in gallons, I talk in cubic meters, sorry. We're doing, say, 100 tons per hectare. That's an inch of water going onto that land. So a farmer with clay soil early in May hates the down in Sarnia on clay, hates the idea of having another week of rain being put on a Tuesday, because they're like, well, great, now we're going to wait another week before we can plant my corn or my beans or whatever. So we're being told, look, you can't do that until the winter wheat comes off and you can get on the field in June, July, August when the wheat's off. So we're going in for summer application, and then you can go back in on a heavier soil in September, October, November after the crops come off. So there's a constant sliding calendar date of when you can apply. So if you have haulers around here that have fields where they've got empty land in the middle of summer, they're very lucky because they've got a great system. When the field is growing and you can't put stuff on, he's going to look around going, where the hell do I put this? So and that's where lagoon as a contingency is a great thing for the municipalities and for the haulers. Because then you all live and die, the haulers and everybody all live and die by this.
Okay, that just brings up a question for me. Is there a maximum capacity to those lagoons?
Your lagoon, I think, holds 25,000 cubic meters.
That means that on your ECA, yes. Yeah. So stated in your ECA as to what the capacity is. I believe the two combined is 25,500.
Okay, thank you. So seeing no other questions, I would like to thank you very much for coming here this evening and presenting to us and answering questions. So unless staff have any questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we will now move into closed session. So the recommendation that council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs and the township, move into closed session at 6:13 PM in the council chambers with the acting CAO, acting clerk, acting director of corporate services / treasurer, superintendent of infrastructure and building, and CAO clerk of the Township of Chatsworth remaining in the room to discuss. Should we add that the Township of Chatsworth is moving into closed session with us? We just have that. So we'll add that the Township of Chatsworth is moving into closed session with us. To discuss 6.1, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board under open meeting exemption K of section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Coburn, Deputy Mayor Pringle, all in favor? That is carried. We are now in closed session, so we'll just wait for staff to get this switched. Okay, we are now back in open session. So we're now back in open session. Council for the Township of Georgian Bluffs and the Township of Chatsworth went into closed session under open meeting exemption K of section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001. As a result of closed session discussions, a decision was made and a motion will be passed now. Do I go ahead and read that motion? Okay. The decision being that joint councils of Township of Georgian Bluffs and the Township of Chatsworth choose not to proceed with the proposal as received. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you. And Mayor Mackey, you had your hand up? Councillor Winters? Any further discussion now? Go ahead, Councillor Witten.
Through you, Mayor. I think it's pretty clear after the presentation from Wessex that they're not interested in our biodigester unless is it High Tech? High Tech is participating as well. And judging from the amount of interest we got in the RFP overall, I think we can deduce by that the biodigester is not of interest to anybody. So I propose that we, at a later date, discuss what we want to do with the site. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Mackey?
Thanks, Mayor Carlton. In the presentation, Wessex was going to be bringing their cake material or their biosolids from Toronto, Peel, Hamilton, and the GTA area, basically. Instead of, because it's a little bit closer than taking it to Sarnia. Sarnia has been having ongoing issues with Wessex. They admitted that they're still learning from their experience to try and mitigate some of the issues down there. I'm not in favor of bringing GTA bios hazards or biosolid, not hazards, biosolids, up to Grey and Bruce when we struggle to deal with our own as Grey and Bruce. Could our lagoon be utilized by other member municipalities in Grey and Bruce? Possibly, if we get it operating more effectively. But I think we need to look after our own area up here. We'll bring material in from down country. My thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further comments from anyone else? Deputy Mayor Pringle.
Yeah, thanks. But yeah, in the, the scope of the presentation there, when we looked at both sides of it, it's going to cost lots and lots of money down the road. And I don't think both municipalities, either one of us want to go there. We want to look at the best options that are going to work for us as two small municipalities working together. And the more we talked, the bigger the numbers seem to be getting. And that was alarming.
Thank you. If there are no other comments, I will now call the vote. All in favor? Oh, Mayor Mackey, did you have another comment?
In their proposal, I thought someone else might make a comment, but in the proposal, they wanted Georgian Bluffs and, as a partner, Chatsworth would be involved. They wanted some significant road upgrades. Also, I think probably for year-round service with no half load. Road costs are very expensive now. And, for the small amount of money that we would have been getting in, I suspect we would have been paying out a lot more in those road development costs than what we'd ever recoup. So the whole package was filled with a lot more questions than there were answers. And I don't think there's the appetite to take a chance. Thanks.
Excellent points. There's no further discussion, then I will, Councillor Gregg, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Carlton. Could I just ask that the motion be read again before we take a vote?
Certainly.
Thank you.
So the motion being that the joint councils of the Township of Georgian Bluffs and the Township of Chatsworth choose not to proceed with the proposal as received. Is that okay?
Thank you.
Patty, go ahead.
I just wonder if you should say the proposal from Wessex. Be specific.
Okay. Everyone's okay with making that minor change? Mayor Mackey. Mayor Mackey has requested a recorded vote, so I will turn this over to our clerks to proceed.
Start with George and Bluff. Councilors. Get all the names right, and then I'll do checks right.
All right, we've got a lot of stuff. So when I call your name, please indicate your vote for or against. That up here, my apologies.
Want me to read that again, just to be sure everybody's clear? That's right. So the joint councils of the Township of Georgian Bluffs and the Townships of Chatsworth choose to not proceed with the proposal as received from Wessex.
Okay, so from the Township of Georgian Bluffs, a recorded vote has been requested. When I call your name, please indicate your position for or against. Councillor Rick Winters,
For.
Councillor Tobin Day,
Yes.
Or
Councillor Kathy Moore Coburn,
for.
Deputy Mayor Grant Pringle,
Or
Mayor Sue Carlton.
For.
Sorry, from the Township of Chatsworth, Mayor Scott Mackey,
Favor?
Councillor Gregg,
For.
Councillor Thompson,
For.
and Councillor Witten.
For.
Thank you, everyone. That is carried. So I just need to read our confirming bylaw, or do we want to set another meeting for the joint councils at this point? I guess we can do that after I do the confirming bylaw. So the recommendation that bylaw number 2023-032, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council on May 15th, 2023, be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and engrossed in the bylaw book. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Thompson, Deputy Mayor Pringle. There's no discussion. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So now we move on to date of the next meeting for the joint councils. Do we want to set one tonight, or and how soon do we want that one set? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Pringle.
were we kind of waiting for staff to get back with some reports that we want to kind of base it on?
Okay, so we'll wait to hear from staff when is a good time, and we'll set the meeting at that point. Okay, so if there's no further business, I will now call for adjournment of this. Mayor Mackey.
Thanks, Mayor Sheldon. It would be nice to keep this moving. I'm just wondering, from staff perspective, how much time is required? When we're all here, it would be nice to get, sometime in the early part of June. I know from a staffing perspective, there's lots of stuff to go through, and I'm not sure where Georgian Bluffs is at as far as helping out in that right now. Patty, how much time do you think it would take to get information back to the councils?
Thank you. So I was have not met with Niall yet. He was just appointed acting. So now that I know who their acting is, then we can work together and try and gather some of that information in terms of I believe it's the operating costs of the lagoon. And we also wanted conversation on perhaps the value of the assets in the biodigester and what we might be able to do with those. So I think that will take some time to put that together and bring Niall up to speed on what's taken place and share some of those reports that we talked about earlier from the feasibility study and from the decommissioning report that was done by Conestoga Rovers, GHD now, I guess.
I would suggest we leave that with Patty and Niall to work on together, and they'll send out a meeting invite to all of us and we can figure out when we can all get together again. And thank you, Chatsworth, for supper. Okay, so if there's no further discussion, I will call for a mover and a seconder to adjourn. Councillor Winters, Councillor Whitten, all in favor. That is carried. Thank you.